welcome back to Otaku No Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me for my review of Momotaro's Divine Sea Warriors, which is really weird for a couple of different reasons. Now, the big thing about Momotaro, it was the first feature-length anime film. So it's technically the first anime. Certainly full-length animated, black and white, released in 1945. This is a propaganda film about anthropomorphic animals going to war for Japan. I wish I were making this up. Now, it should be pointed out that any animated film takes a while to be produced. So the fact that it came out in 1945 means that they probably started pre-production and then production in maybe 1943, which is basically the middle of the war for the Pacific Theater. So this is a very, let's just say, positive spin on how things are going with the war in Japan. And unfortunately, as things got worse and worse, the film, when it was released, really didn't reflect how the war was going. But what can you do? So yeah, this is Japanese propaganda about World War II. I should also point out, this film has not been translated into English. There's no fan sub, there's no official release. Partly because of how the Americans and British and so forth are represented in the film, and partly because it's so hard to find. It was long thought that all the copies of it were destroyed in the aftermath of World War II, but a negative was found in the 80s, and it was released on VHS. But no one's particularly anxious, at least over in Japan, to release it. It may be in the public domain, depending on how copyright laws work, but who knows. I was able to find a very low quality copy for this review, and I'm just going to talk about the movie itself. I'm going to run through it and just explain it and kind of leave you to judge. Starts off with a bunch of young anthropomorphic animals in uniform. One of the big problems with this film actually is the fact that everything is drawn in this very rounded style, very, not even Disney, very early 40s style, you know, rounded cutesy character design. Everyone looks young, everyone looks like a child, but they're not. So these are young men going off to war, and the other animals gather around them to celebrate the fact that they're running off to war. To give you a feel of how weird this can be, one of these characters is a bird in uniform who goes home to feed his children, who are chicks in a nest, which he then proceeds to feed. So, I mean, we've got a walking, talking bird in a uniform who goes home to a stick nest and little chirping chicks, which he then feeds. Cognitive dissonance? Weird. So anyway, we then cut to sort of the main character, who is a monkey in uniform, who proceeds to sit down with the kids of the village, or wherever they happen to be, and talk with them, and they ask him questions, and he replies, and so forth. Apparently it's about the war. Again, it's not been translated into English, so I'm just going off of what very little Japanese I know, and I'm just trying to get a feel for what's going on, and they're just talking, so I'm not sure. We then cut to the first big dramatic sequence of the film, where the monkey soldier's little brother is playing with the monkey soldier's cap. You know, the cap then falls in a river. The little boy falls into the river. Monkey boy goes after him, jumps into the river to save him, and then everyone else gathers together to go and rescue them, and they take a vine and throw it into the river and all that kind of stuff. I am convinced this is a metaphor for Japan's getting into World War II. For a long time, they claimed, and indeed in their declaration of war, they stated that they attacked Pearl Harbor because they believed that America was oppressing the people of the East, and they were, Asia particularly, and that America was, just had very oppressive economic policies, and that America had to be stopped basically, and that Japan presented itself as the protector of the rest of Asia, and the only one strong enough to fight for that. So they were going to jump into the thick of things and, you know, take care of this, thanks to everyone coming together and rallying together to take care of this. So yeah, very interesting. We then cut to a very lovely sequence actually. The little kid's been saved. The monkey and his little brother go off to sort of enjoy the pasture and the fields, sit down, a gust of wind blows the cap off again, the little brother runs off after it, at which point the monkey laughs and lets that happen. Now you'd think from the previous scene he'd be worried about the kid getting in trouble again, but no, he just sits there and laughs. But fortunately this allows the beginning of a really beautiful sequence where he watches dandelion petals flutter off in the wind. And as he watches this, he hears in his mind's eye, or in his mind's ear, the sound of the droning of engines and the yell of soldiers, and the dandelion petals quickly become a metaphor for parachutes and soldiers parachuting down. Very effective, particularly for this movie where the sound effects and the audio in general is pretty basic. The voice acting is essentially people yelling into a microphone in what sounds like an aircraft hangar. I mean, it's very poor audio. And a lot of it's just lines kind of shouted at the screen. And the sound effects are usually, there's usually only one sound effect going on at any given time. So if someone's running through a jungle, you'll hear the tap, tap, tap of their feet running along, but you won't hear a lot of ambient sound effects. And they just weren't doing that back then. So in this sequence, the change in audio is really effective because you get this quiet, nice sequence transitioning to these very harsh sounds. Works very well. Anyway, kid runs back with a cap, everything's fine. We then cut to an island and a musical sequence in which the native animals are, apparently spontaneously, constructing an airstrip and hangars out of local materials for the Japanese to land there. I repeat, the local animals are spontaneously constructing an airstrip and a landing field and all that out of local materials so the Japanese can land there. So the elephants are tearing down trees and the rhinoceros are digging up things and other animals are, putting things really weird. Then the planes arrive, all the animals go nuts, and planes come in, everyone disembarks. We see the soldiers that we saw before. One of them is, the bird actually climbs out holding a cage with a bird in it. A bird jumping around in the cage. Again, weird. Anyway, I should also point out that the cage bars are clearly much wider than the bird, so much so that later on in the movie, another character walks out to the bird cage, sticks a finger into the bird cage, the bird hops onto his finger, he then pulls it out of the bird cage, right like that. So what's the... So, everyone's disembarking from the planes, including a human. This is Momotaro. Now, Momotaro himself is from a very old Japanese fairy tale called Momotaro, in which basically he was sent by the gods, he came out of a giant peach, and did some amazing magical things, basically. But Momotaro is a classic Japanese character, very recognizably, Japanese. So he walks out. I am not kidding. He has a Japanese samurai haircut, the bandana thing, and a katana with a full Japanese uniform. And he's leading the troops. Commanding officer goes, sits at his little command chair and so forth. Everyone's, saluting him. Weird. We now get a sequence in which the Japanese very kindly teach the native animals how to speak Japanese in an outdoor classroom. The class, of course, is complete anarchy until a passing soldier pulls out a harmonica, starts playing a song, and the song is used to teach these animals how to speak Japanese. It's never used again. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's just there. And it's long. It takes a lot. Okay, so that moves along. The characters then start to suit up, at which point we cut to a sailing ship. Like 3-mast sailing ship. Like a 17th century sailing ship. We then get a long sort of black and white, if you've ever seen one of those sort of shadow puppet type thing, basically a shadow puppet sequence about European pirates invading India, I think. I assume they're trying to tie that into World War II and American oppression. I don't know. It's weird. So, the soldiers then can finish suiting up, get their parachutes on, climb into the planes take off. The soldiers are very excited in the planes, very happy and eating and all that kind of good stuff. The planes then arrive at their destination. The soldiers all get up, head on over to jump out. I should point out Momotaro is leading the charge. He's at the head. And as we know, the commanding officer is always the first one on the ground, and he's actually... No. Anyway, so Momotaro's there. Everyone jumps off the plane. Beautifully animated sequences of, these parachutes going down. I should point out that as soon as they jump out, the flak immediately stops. No danger while they're actually jumping out of the plane. They then jump ecstatically, euphorically. They all look so happy to be jumping out of this plane. I mean, big grins on their faces as they tumble out, parachutes open, land on the ground. There's some sounds of gunfire. They grab everything up. After a very brief battle in which nobody dies, the Americans are then shown running around, flailing their arms, and unconditionally surrender. All of them. Boom. Over. Now, again, this movie was all storyboarded out in the middle of the war, so certain allowances can be made. It's still pretty darn silly. Again, the only speaking part for the Americans, and I should point out the Americans all speaking English. I mean, they obviously got an American who spoke English to do their lines. He stutters, and all he does is worry about what's going on and unconditionally surrender to the Japanese and, sweating bullets and all this kind of stuff. All the Japanese sit there very stoic and so forth. Yeah. We then cut back to the home front where all the kids are playing around and they're climbing up a tree and jumping off of it onto a map of America upon which they stomp. The camera then pans up to Mount Fuji and the movie ends.